Well, we are in the book of Ezekiel. We have come essentially to the end, and that meant we had, first of all, the prophecies before the destruction of Jerusalem. And this was a dark series of prophecies where he was dealing with why God basically justifying why he was doing such terrible things to Israel, to Jerusalem, his own promised land, his own temple and everything. And he took Ezekiel with him and showed him what was going on in vision. And he saw the idolatry being done in the temple chambers. He saw all these horrible things. So he was justified in his judgment. Then he comes to the prophecies after the destruction of Jerusalem, and the tenor of this changes. What he's dealing with here is now their hope is lost. Up until the destruction, their false prophets were saying, this is just a glitch. God just allows this to test us a little bit, but everything's going to be fine, and God's going to judge Babylon, and we're all going to be back, and everything's going to be fine. But after the destruction and the revealing that all that was false prophecy, the people were distraught. And so he gives them comfort after comfort. We've seen so far the fact that he tells them he was a watchman. He was not just a doomsayer. He was a watchman. A watchman sees the danger and tells the people about it. Not only a watchman, but also concerning the shepherds, which were the leaders of Israel. Then the judgment announced against Mount Seir and Israel's restoration. He begins to point to the future and showing Israel will be restored. Then the vision of the dry bones, which we show you at the end of the series, Dory's version of this. And this is a symbolic representation of God taking the remnants of Israel and bringing them back up. Phoebe was telling me, she studied forensic science, that it meant a lot to her to hear him talk about the dry bones, because that's an actual stage of decomposition where there's no gooey stuff left, just the dry bones. And that's what is restored. And then the battle of Gog and Israel. Gog, the prince, Gog, the prince of Magog. And this is the great coalition, northern coalition, that comes together and tries to eliminate Israel once and for all. We put that into its position during the Great Tribulation period. And it actually is the end of the middle of the tribulation period, just before Antichrist is given control of the world domination. We come now to the temple, the kingdom temple and its worship, and this takes us to the end. We are looking now at, we spent the last couple of times setting the position for this, to say we want to take this literally, that this is an actual prophecy of something that has not happened yet, will happen. It is during the kingdom. We often say the millennium, but the millennium is just the first 1,000 years of the kingdom. Millennium means mille-annum, 1,000 years. And then Christ turns over the leadership to God the Father, and it goes on forever. So all of the Old Testament prophecies about the kingdom never ends. It's all true. It just changes form, and the Son turns over the authority to the Father. We actually come then to chapter 40, verse 1 through 42, verse 20, And in this section, we see the introduction in verses 1 through 4. I've divided this up. We'll break this up. The rest of this, there's not much for a teacher to say, except here's what it says. I don't understand half of how it's going to look or what it's going to be. I don't read architecture stuff, you know. I don't know these things. So I'll just give it to you and let you make the best sense of it as you can. I just want you to notice how detailed it is, how thick the walls are, strong, powerful, and all of this too. I think, like most structures, like churches that are built with high ceilings. I never really noticed that until I went to a church that had about an 8-foot ceiling that was flat across. When you come in, you felt like you wanted to do this, you know, because you're expecting churches to lift your gaze upward, and it's symbolic. There's no particular benefit to having a vaulted ceiling for the church. You know, have it in a tent. It's the people gathering is the church. But this is all the symbolism of majesty, of power. This is the center of the world's authority right there. So we see, first of all, the date of the vision, verse 1. In the 25th year of our captivity, that's from the time that Ezekiel was taken, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, the 14th year after that the city was smitten. So 25th year of the captivity, 14 years after the fall of Jerusalem. And it's at the beginning of the year. This is the Hebrew Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year. Some debate as to when that actually is, because there is 2, possibly 3 different interpretations of what the Jews could mean by that. But in the selfsame day, the hand of the Lord was upon me and brought me thither. This is where he actually picks him up, as it were, and takes him in vision someplace. Arno Gaebelein, who Jewish background, he takes the date of the vision to be 572. And these old dates are hard to pinpoint, but I think that's about right. This is the next to last vision that Ezekiel experienced. Now, it's the last one that he records, but the one before the very last one that he experienced, he's already told us about. And it came, it was, the last one is 2 years after this vision, but he recorded it for us back in Ezekiel 29, 17 to 21. Ezekiel recounted the hand of the Lord earlier in Ezekiel 1:3, 3:14, 3:22, 8:1, 33:22, and 37:1. These are 7 times that this is the 7th time that this particular characteristic of the vision was, where God was manhandling him, God handling him. It was actually picking him up, taking him someplace. We see the place in the vision, verse 2, in the visions of God brought he me into the land of Israel, and set me upon a very high mountain, by which, or upon which, the King James margin says, was as the frame of a city on the south. So to be either south of the mountain or south on the mountain, depending on which way you would read it. All of the symbolic interpretations that we were dealing with in the last couple of times failed to say this refers to the church, because it doesn't account for the place of the vision being Israel. The very high mountain, my opinion, exists only in the vision. Mount Zion, if this is where the temple is built, is not a very high mountain. And he seems to stress that. And he has been there. He knew Mount Zion. This could be a spiritual reference, that type of thing, but that doesn't sound likely in this description. So I think this is this high, lofty place of seeing. The language allows seeing the temple from the mountain or seeing it on the mountain. Then we see who the instructor and the tools in the vision. Verse 3, and he brought me thither, took me to that mountain. Behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, with a line of flax in his hand, it was like a rope, and a measuring reed, and he stood in the gate. He's going to describe the gate later. This word brass is the Hebrew word for copper or bronze. So the man shone with a dark golden color. We would be surprised to see a person looking like that. Radiant. Now this is either an angel or the angel of the Lord, being Jesus, before his incarnation. Yes.
Is that S-H-O-N-E, shown?
Yes, not that shown, yeah. S-H-O-N-E, yes, shown like a light. This angel stands in the gate that Ezekiel will describe later. It's at the eastern gate, actually. Then we see remember that he has this rope, and then he has the measuring reed. We see the duties of the vision in verse 4. The man said unto me, Son of man, behold with thine eyes, hear with thine ears, and set thine heart upon all that I shall show thee. For to the intent, here's why I want you to pay attention, that I might show them unto thee, art thou brought hither. The very reason for coming here is for you to pay attention to what I'm showing you. Then he says, declare all that thou seest to the house of Israel. So not only see and hear and set your heart on it, consider it, but pay attention, you're going to have to tell them about this later. And of course, what he wrote is his obeying of this. The angel gives him commands to the prophet. This word behold means to see, or in general to perceive with eyes. Hear means to hear or perceive with ears. And set thine heart upon means direct your mind, or direct your knowledge, direct your thinking, direct your reflection, reflecting on it, and direct your memory on this. Ezekiel was to pay close attention because that was the very purpose of God in showing him the vision, that he might declare, and the word means to report it to the captives. We come then to verses 5 to 16, the eastern gate. I've heard a lot of the theories about, present-day Jerusalem and the Temple Mount and the sealed up of the eastern gate and so on. This is the eastern gate that they're trying to talk about, of a temple that hasn't been built yet. The wall of the temple, verse 5, behold a wall on the outside of the house round about. The house is the temple, and this is the great boundary wall. We showed pictures earlier of the schematic of it all. So he first talks about the fact that it was all surrounded by a wall. And in the man's hand a measuring reed. Now the measuring reed was of 6 cubits long by the cubit and a hand breadth. So he measured the breadth of the building, 1 reed, the height 1 reed. Now, we're going to get a measurement of the entire length of the wall, and it's going to be like 500 reeds. So that's not what he's talking about here. The measuring reed was 6 units of a cubit, which I think they said technically was from the elbow to the little finger, and a hand breadth. So I take it about 1.5 feet plus 6 inches. So it makes about 2 feet. So this is a 12-foot pole. Bigger than that 10-foot pole you wouldn't touch that guy with. So this is the 12-foot pole. And this is the measuring reed. So as we hear the measurements by reeds, we'll get that idea. So he measured the breadth of the building, 1 reed, and the height 1 reed. So the measuring reed, average cubit, I went through all that. So it's 12 feet long. Since the wall is later measured to be 500 reeds long, this measurement must be the height and then the thickness of the wall. So it's an extended cube here where it's as thick as it is high, 12 feet high. Now we look at the eastern gate itself. Verse 6, then came he unto the gate which looketh toward the east. The King James here tells us that the Hebrew of this is whose face, the gate whose face was the way toward the east. And went up the stairs thereof, and measured the threshold of the gate, which was 1 reed broad, and the other threshold of the gate, which was 1 reed broad. So I'm already lost. I don't know which threshold is he talking about here. But the measurements seem to be from the front to the back of the gate. That means it goes through the wall, the 12 feet going through the wall. That's my guess. Then number 3, the chambers and the spaces between the chambers. Verse 7, every little chamber was 1 reed long and 1 reed broad. And between the little chambers were 5 cubits. The threshold of the gate by the porch of the gate within was 1 reed. The little chambers speak of the guard rooms. This word is translated guard rooms back in the area of Solomon's temple. There were 3 rooms, he tells us later, on either side of the gate. The rooms, I take it, to be 12 feet by 12 feet. That's not a, I was joking with my family. They said, what would happen to you if Mom died first, And so I said, I'd probably rent out a storage unit and live there, get a cot, bookshelf. And my wife and I went up to the IKEA, the new thing up there. And I said, yeah, this have these little rooms where you have the kitchen and the bed and all that stuff all there. I said, yeah, that fit into my storage unit. But anyway, it's 12 by 12, so that's a fairly decent size for whatever this is for. And then with 5 cubits, which would be 7.5 feet, because this is not reeds now, this is the cubit itself, so 7.5 feet of wall between them. So this, you don't pass between guard rooms. 7.5 feet of wall between them. Then we look inside the gate, verse 8. He measured also the porch of the gate within 1 reed. So this porch seems to be the area just inside the gate. Number 5, the porch outside the gate, verse 9. Then measured he the porch of the gate 8 cubits, and the post thereof 2 cubits, and the porch of the gate was inward. So that sounds like to me like you're dealing with you go through the gate and find the porch. Now 8 cubits is also 12 feet. Why he doesn't say the reed, I don't know. But the posts we find later are 90 feet tall. And so here the 2 cubit, 3 feet, is about how round they would be. So a yard in diameter, stretching up for 90 feet. And there are two posts here dealing with this. Then the chambers of the gate, the little chambers of the gate eastward were 3 on this side and 3 on that side. They 3 were of 1 measure. They all measured the same. And the post had 1 measure on this side and on that side. So the posts are on either side of the gate and somehow connected to the posts. That's all I can tell. I don't know whether they're attached in some way, fastened at the base. I don't know. Then the entry of the gate, verse 11, he measured the breadth of the entry of the gate, 10 cubits, and the length of the gate, 13 cubits. So 10 cubits are 15 feet, 13 cubits are 19.5 feet, seems to be the breadth and length of the doorway. But I don't even know what that means. So it's we've got all these measurements. So somebody with a technical mind to work this out, figure it out. The commentators mentioned that skilled architects have worked this all out and figured out. It's quite possible. So, but I don't know. Well, we saw the plans. Porch area in front of the chambers, verse 12. The space also before the little chambers was 1 cubit on this side, and the space, or the limit or bound, was 1 cubit on that side. The little chambers were 6 cubits on this side and 6 cubits on that side. The best I can make is that outside where the guards would stay in the chamber room, they walk out, there's a path, then there's a wall. So I think this describes a wall division just outside the guard rooms. And this would be some sort of protection for them, I guess. Number 9, the space of the eastern gate between chambers, verses 13 and 14. He measured then the gate from the roof of one little chamber to the roof of another. That sounds to me like the farthest expanse of the gate, where the chambers that are on either side begin. The breadth was 25 cubits, door against door. He also made also posts of 60 cubits. 60 is 3 times 20, 60 cubits, even unto the post of the court round about the gate. So the space taken by the whole gate, 25 cubits, which is 37.5 feet. The posts are shown here to be 60 cubits tall, which is 90 feet that I mentioned before. We saw they were 3 feet around, 3 feet diameter. Then 10, the depth of the eastern gate, from the face of the gate to the entrance unto the face of the porch of the inner gate, were 50 cubits. 50 cubits is 75 feet, seems to indicate the total length as you pass through the gate, or possibly from this gate to the next gate. But one way or the other, 75 feet. Then, so that 12 feet that we saw earlier, that would be some particular part of this, and then this is the grand total. Again, I'm lost. Then 11, the windows and decoration of the chambers. There were narrow, and this word is actually translated closed elsewhere, windows to the little chambers. Now, a closed window means that they had a lattice work that they would close, and it would prevent people from going in and out of the window if someone was inclined to do that. And to their posts within the gate round about, and likewise to the arches, which could be galleries or porches, the windows were round about inward or within, and upon each post were palm trees. So we say how they are decorated. Now, why palm trees? Well, why not? I don't know. It's one of those things where the palm trees were on decorating the Solomon's temple. So there's spiritual meaning to all of this. But I was out in California where they have a lot of palm trees, and a person was saying, I just don't like palm trees. Well, okay, then you might find this temple decoration offensive. I don't know, but they do. They're rather exalted. Our trees, the branches grow out down below. You know, you can climb them up and so on. But palm trees, you got to have some sort of mechanism to get up there. It just goes up and up and up. So they're high, lofty. I don't know. Anyway, the guard rooms have windows that are closed with lattice work. The palm trees are predominant decoration of the chambers. We move then to the outer court, the one close to the outside of the building, and I'll just read this to you. My other commentary said there's no need to go into this, just telling you what it was. So I guess I'll do the same thing. So we'll read through it slowly. Then brought he me into the outward court, just inside the gate. You're in the outer court. Lo, there were chambers and a pavement made for the court round about. 30 chambers were upon the pavement. If you remember any of the diagrams, you saw all those little squares going all the way around. And the pavement by the side of the gates, over against the length of the gate, was the lower pavement. Then he measured the breadth from the forefront of the lower gate unto the forefront of the inner court, without, or from without, 100 cubits eastward and northward. So 100 cubits would be 150 feet. The gate of the outward court that looked, or whose face was toward the north, he measured the length thereof and the breadth thereof, And the little chambers thereof were 3 on this side, 3 on that side. The posts thereof and the arches, galleries or porches, thereof were after the measure of the first gate. So they were the same. He doesn't go into the minute detail. The length thereof was 50 cubits, so it'd be 75 feet. The breadth 5 and 20 cubits. Their windows and their arches, their palm trees were after the measure of the gate that looketh toward the east. They went up unto it by 7 steps. First time we're told about how many steps. And the arches thereof were before them. The gate of the inner court was over against the gate toward the north and toward the east, and he measured from gate to gate 100 cubits. We have no gate at the western side. After that, he brought me toward the south. From the east, that would be moving left. Behold, a gate toward the south. He measured the posts thereof, the arches thereof according to the measures. There were windows in it, and the arches thereof round about, like those windows, the length was 50 cubits, the breadth 5 and 20 cubits. There were 7 steps to go up to it. The arches thereof were before them. It had palm trees, one on this side, another on that side, upon the post thereof. Then the paragraph changes, verse 27, there was a gate in the inner court toward the south, and he measured from gate to gate toward the south 100 cubits. So there you go. As the commentator said, no need to comment on that because that's pretty complicated. Now we come through this to the inner court. You're up the steps, 7 steps, and you're up on this inner court area. Verses 28 to 37. And he brought me to the inner court by the south gate. So he had gone around the outer court to the south gate, coming into the inner court. He measured the south gate according to these measures, and the little chambers thereof, and the posts thereof, and the arches thereof according to these measures. There were windows in it, and in the arches thereof round about. It was 50 cubits long, 5 and 20 cubits broad. The arches round about were 5 and 20 cubits long, 5 cubits broad, breadth. The arches thereof were toward the utter court. The palm trees were upon the post thereof, and going up to it, it had 8 steps. So this is going up to the temple level itself. And he brought me into the inner court toward the east, and he measured the gate according to these measures. And the little chambers thereof, and the posts thereof, and the arches thereof were according to these measures. And there were windows therein, and the arches thereof round about it. It was 50 cubits long, 5 and 20 cubits broad. So this is the same. It's very, very symmetrical. The arches thereof were toward the outward court. The palm trees were upon the posts thereof on this side and on that side, and the going up to it had 8 steps. And he brought me to the north gate and measured it according to these measures. The little chambers thereof, the posts thereof, and the arches thereof, and the windows to it round about. The length was 50 cubits, the breadth was 5 and 20 cubits. And the posts thereof were toward the outer court. The palm trees were upon the posts thereof on this side and on that side, and the going up to it had 8 steps. So, seeing the eastern, the southern, and now the northern gates. Now we find another part of this, and here are the tables that are used for the offerings, and then the chambers for the inner court. So, verse 38, the chambers and the entries thereof were by the post of the gate, where they washed the burnt offering. These were not just dirty old animals. They had to be all nice and cleaned up before they were offered to the Lord. Verse 39 on. And the porch of the gate, in the porch of the gate, were 2 tables on this side and 2 tables on that side, to slay thereon the burnt offering and the sin offering and the trespass offering. 3 different kinds of offerings here. Burnt offering almost always was a sin offering, but there's another type of sin offering as well. All of these would involve, and trespass is another sin offering, but it's all these involve the blood sacrifice. At the side without, as one goeth up, or at the step to the entry of the north gate, were 2 tables, and on the other side, which were at the porch of the gate, were 2 tables. 4 tables were on this side, 4 tables on that side, by the side of the gate. 8 tables whereupon they slew their sacrifices. And the 4 tables were of hewn stone for the burnt offering, of 1.5 cubits long. So, what's that? 18 and 9? 27, okay. So 24 inches is 2 foot, a little over 2 feet long. And 1.5 cubits broad, 1 cubit high. Whereupon so you can lay it down, you don't have to lift the animal way up. You put it down, it's only 18 inches high. 1 cubit high. Whereupon also they laid the instruments wherewith they slew the burnt offering and the sacrifice. And within were hooks. This could be andirons, like in a fireplace, or 2 hearthstones. And a hand broad, fastened round about, and upon the tables was the flesh of the offering. So they went with hooks, because this is where you could hang the flesh for the offering. And without the inner gate, outside the inner gate, were the chambers of the singers in the inner court, which was at the side of the north gate. And their prospect was toward the north, at one side of the east gate, having the prospect toward the north. And he said unto me, this chamber, whose prospect is toward the south, is for the priests, the keepers of the charge, that is, keepers of the ward or the ordinance of the house. And the chamber whose prospect is toward the north is for the priests, the keepers of the charge of the altar. These are the sons of Zadok, among the sons of Levi, which come near to the Lord to minister unto him. So we find here a change in the priesthood. This is not just of Levi, but from Levi, the people of Zadok, which will come near to the Lord to minister unto him. So he measured the court 100 cubits long, 100 cubits broad, 4 square, and the altar was that before the house. So the old temple, the brazen altar, made of brass, made of copper, and it was with Solomon's, it was a very vast thing. So that is there. We saw that in our schematic. And finally, let's look at the porch of the house. Now, the house is the temple itself. Verses 48, 49. And he brought me to the porch of the house. This is that area in front of the temple. And measured each post of the porch, 5 cubits on this side, 5 cubits on that side. The breadth of the gate was 3 cubits on this side, 3 cubits on that side. The length of the porch was 20 cubits, the breadth 11 cubits. And he brought me by the steps whereby they went up to it, and there were pillars by the posts, one on this side, another on that side. In Solomon's temple, there was also 2 great posts. They were named, what was it, Boaz and Jachin? Yeah, that's it, Jabez. And why is never really explained. There's lots of stories, and of course the Jews had their theories, but we're not told. These no names given to them here. Perhaps in practice they will call them the same thing, I don't know. But the house is the holy temple itself, and this is that porch area as you would approach to it. So it says, he brought me by the steps whereby they went up to it. There were pillars by the post, one on this side, one on the other. So steps up into the temple area itself. So I wish I could, just show you pictures and all that kind of stuff, but you have to just see this is God's intention, how God will build it. We're going to be getting into the more about this, but then the next section will be dealing with the worship procedure. Pastor?
If I may.